This is not just a story. This is the full history of Islam. One man, one cave, one night. How did he unite Arabia, a land living in its darkest age, in just 23 years? How did the Islamic State surpass even the great Roman Empire in only 100 years? The Battle of Uhud could not stop the Muslims, nor could the Roman army of 100,000 at Mu'tah. Our story begins with the year of the elephant at Kaaba and reaches all the way to the conquest of Istanbul. And yes, from an orphan child to a civilization that ruled 3 continents. From the time of our prophet to the 4 caliphs, to the Umayyads and the Abbasids, and then to the Ottomans. This is not just the history of a religion, this is the fastest transformation in human history. The greatest conquests, the brightest golden age, 900 years of Islam in just 60 minutes.
There is no turning back today. Hold your ground! Retreat! Allahu Akbar!
You are watching Religious Story TV. We are creating the first AI-based Islamic history series on YouTube. To support us, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. This helps us reach more people and create more videos. If you are ready, let's begin. The last quarter of the 6th century. We are in the middle of a dark age. The world is tired from the bloody wars of 2 great empires, the Sasanian and the Byzantine. The empires were still standing, but they had lost their soul. Justice belonged to the strong. Humans were enemies of other humans. Slavery was normal. Oppression was ordinary. Mercy was rare. At this very moment, not at the center of the world, but at its edge, in a land surrounded by deserts, a scene was being prepared that would change the direction of history. Our story begins in Makkah. This land did not take much space on maps, but it stood at the heart of trade routes. Politically, it was unimportant. There was no great empire and no central authority. There were tribes, there were blood feuds, there were idols. Every tribe had a god, and every god had an interest. But in the heart of this dry land, there was a black structure, a sanctuary that no one could see as ordinary. The Kaaba, one of the oldest places of worship in human history, a legacy from Ibrahim. Over the centuries, it had lost its direction, but it never lost its holiness. However, at that time, the Kaaba was not standing for Tawhid. It stood in the shadow of 360 idols, like a silent pile of stone. Society was inside a deep darkness known as Jahiliyyah. Justice was worse here than in most parts of the world. The weak, the orphan, and the woman had no value. Baby girls were buried alive. A father would take his newborn daughter, go deep into the desert, dig a hole, and bury that innocent child under the sand. Why? So there would be no shame. So she would not be a burden. One of the most brutal traditions in history was lived as if it were normal. Makkah had fallen into darkness, but it was also standing on the edge of a great explosion. The first sign of tension that would change the fate of Makkah appeared. The year was around 570. In Yemen, the Abyssinian governor Abraha turned his eyes toward Makkah. He had built a magnificent church in Sana'a, but it did not attract the Arabs or the people of the region. This hurt Abraha's pride. He thought, if I destroy the Kaaba, the Arabs will be forced to come to my church. And so one of the strangest armies in history set out. 60,000 soldiers, hundreds of horses, dozens of camels, and most importantly, 9 giant elephants. At their head was a massive war-trained elephant named Mahmud. This was not just a military threat, it was psychological warfare. The message was clear. What you call sacred will be crushed under the feet of my army. As the army moved toward Makkah, It crushed everything in its path. Small tribes scattered, cities surrendered, even Taif did not resist. No one could stand against elephants. The people of Makkah heard the news, but they were helpless. They could not prepare for war. They had no power and no army. The owner of the Kaaba was not human. They simply withdrew. As the leader of the city, Abdul Muttalib moved the people to the mountains and spoke these historic and tense words: "I am the owner of the camels. The Kaaba has an owner who will protect it." And then it happened. When the armies reached the gate of the Kaaba, Abraha gave the order to his army: "Move forward." But Mahmud, the giant elephant, did not take a single step. They whipped him. They hit him. They shouted. The elephant did not move. When they turned him toward the south, east, or west, he began to run. But every time they turned him toward the Kaaba, he fell to the ground. The other elephants did the same. 9 elephants, as if stopped by an invisible force. And then the sky began to darken. At first it looked like a small cloud. Then it grew and spread. And the people of Makkah realized something. These were not clouds. These were birds. Thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of birds. Ababil birds. Small, dark, flying in groups. They carried stones in their beaks and feet. But these were not ordinary stones. They were special stones, small, hard, like baked clay. And then it began like rain. Stones started to fall on the army of Abraha. The soldiers screamed and ran in terror. The elephants went wild. The massive army fell into panic. Even Abraha tried to escape, but one of the stones struck him as well. Abraha and his army were destroyed there, completely scattered. This event shouted to the whole world that Makkah and the Kaaba were not just stone structures, but were under divine protection. And then, in the year right after this miracle, while the date was 20 April, 571, the orphan who would change the destiny of humanity was born. His name was Muhammad, peace be upon him. His father Abdullah had passed away before he was born. His mother Amina raised him as an orphan until he reached the age of 6. Then she also passed away. The young child was now without both father and mother. First, his grandfather Abdul Muttalib took care of him. After that, his uncle Abu Talib became his guardian. In the harsh conditions of Makkah, being an orphan was not easy. But this child was different from the very beginning. He belonged to a noble lineage, but he was not rich. He was protected, but not spoiled. He met the hard face of life at an early age. Muhammad did not spend his childhood in palaces. He worked as a shepherd. He joined trade journeys. He observed people. He saw the true face of Makkah. Lies, cheating, interest, slavery, how women were humiliated, how the strong were always seen as right. But he did not become part of this system. Even at a young age, the people of Makkah gave him a title, Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. This title suited him perfectly. He never lied. He was merciful to everyone. He loved to help people. He was different from everyone else, like a single light in deep darkness. And Muhammad was disturbed by this system, but he did not rebel. He did not shout. He did not feel that he belonged to this world. He was only thinking about the purpose of his existence. What people of Makkah believed could not be true. But then, what was the truth? He often left Makkah and went to the Hira cave. This was not an escape. It was a search. He was looking for answers in silence. These questions slowly separated him from Makkah. As time passed, strange signs began to appear in his life. Dreams, feelings that came in silence, a heavy sense of responsibility growing in his heart. But there was still no voice, not yet. The next step would be a step with no return. A voice, a sentence, a command, and history would never be the same again. While working in trade in his 20s, Muhammad showed such strong honesty that it caught the attention of Khadija, one of the most respected women of Makkah. The home they built together would later become the first stronghold of a great mission. Yet, in Muhammad's heart, there was a deep unrest that never ended. The period of Wahi, the moment the voice rose. It was night. Makkah was silent. Even the desert wind was moving slowly. The city was sleeping under the shadow of idols, but history was about to wake up. In the Hira cave, there was a man alone. He had just reached the age of 40. He had again left the noise of Makkah and come to this cave on Jabal al-Nur. Days of deep reflection had passed, and finally that night an answer would come. It was a night in Ramadan in the year 610. The angel Jibril appeared in the cave. The air became heavy. Time seemed to stop. The angel said, "Read." Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was shocked. He was afraid. He trembled. He replied, "I cannot read." But the voice did not withdraw. The same command was repeated, stronger, heavier. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the same answer again, and the third time the angel Jibril said, "Read in the name of your Lord who created." This was not an invitation. This was a duty, and this duty would change not only his life, but the history of humanity. When he left the cave, he was no longer the same person. His heart was heavy. There was an unseen but crushing burden on his shoulders. He was now chosen. He ran home. His wife Khadijah met him. He said, "Cover me." He was shaking. This moment was critical because prophethood did not begin with heroic strength, but with very human fear. Soon after, a new command came: "Rise and warn." Khadijah listened to him and to what he experienced. She did not hesitate. She comforted him. She immediately believed in what he said. This was very important, because this call was first accepted by the closest one. The first 3 years of Islam in Makkah passed as a secret call. The command for open preaching had not yet been given by Allah. A small group of people gathered in the house of Arqam. Among them were slaves, young people from powerful families, orphans, the oppressed pushed aside by the system, and also wealthy traders. The early years required great caution because Makkah was very dangerous for them. The call was shared only with trusted people, and it spread slowly. The first Muslims did not put their status at risk. They put their lives at risk. But no matter how careful they were, this silent cry soon reached the ears of the Makkah elite, especially the protectors of the system such as Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab. And when the call became public, Makkah was shaken, because this message rejected idols, rejected tribal superiority, rejected the division between rich and poor, and most dangerous of all, it said, "You are all equal." This was a declaration of war against the system of Makkah. First they mocked, then they isolated, then torture began. The year was 613, the third year of prophethood. With the divine command, "Warn your closest relatives first," Prophet Muhammad went up to Mount Safa and addressed all the people of Makkah. This was the moment when the entire population of Makkah officially and openly learned about Islam. With this open call, torture, threats and pressure began to target all Muslims across Makkah. Slaves were whipped, the poor were crushed, Muslims were starved, some were killed. The martyrdom of the Yasir family on the burning sands, and Bilal al-Habashi crying out, "Ahad, Ahad," 1-1, while a massive stone was placed on his chest, pushed the tension to its peak. But this oppression did not extinguish faith. On the contrary, it proved that this message was not false, because despite torture, they did not abandon their belief. After this period lasted for 3 years, the Mushrik of Makkah increased the violence even more. They imposed a 3-year embargo on Muslims and those who supported them. This was a social and economic boycott. For Muslims, Makkah had become an open-air prison. During this time, Muslims faced extreme hunger and deep poverty. They survived by eating tree bark. Then came the year 619, known as the Year of Sorrow. Khadijah and the Prophet's protector